people! I'm Ginny Metheral. I'm a fourth generation witch of Irish descent, and I practice the old ways or traditional witchcraft in the beautiful southwest of England amongst the rolling hills of Devon. Today's video is all about that rather frenetic and wonderful festival of the Wiccans called Litha, which you or I might know it as the summer solstice, or sometimes, but not always, as midsummer. So the word Litha comes from an old Anglo-Saxon term denoting one of the months of the year, and Litha in itself just means light. This term was taken by the Wiccans in the 1950s to celebrate the summer solstice. The summer solstice is just when the Earth and the Sun are at their furthest distance from each other, and is obviously an annual event. It was therefore an event that was always centred around sun worship, and every culture had something happening at this time of year. From the ancient Egyptians, the Mesopotamians, the Babylonians, the Aztecs, the Incas, the summer solstice was a big deal. It is just part of sun worship and saying hello to that marvellous god. Due to the rather useless Gregorian calendar that we follow, Litha can fall anywhere between the 20th and the 23rd of June each year. But this year, the celebrations will start at dusk on the 20th of June and finish at sunrise on the 21st, with midsummer sunrise happening at 4:31 a.m. However, rather confusingly, Litha celebrations are not traditional UK midsummer celebrations. Midsummer in the UK is traditionally celebrated on the 24th, which the Christian faith took over and called the Feast of St John the Baptist, one of their major saints. So although Litha and Midsummer are very similar, they're not quite the same. However, the traditions associated with both of them are. So everything I'm going to talk about here, you can apply to both dates, that of the summer solstice and that of the traditional English midsummer. Litha is essentially a fire festival, and so at its most basic, you would light a bonfire, dance around it, possibly naked, although I don't like to do that because I don't like the cold, but I'm quite happy to dance around a bonfire, wait till dawn and praise the sun as it rises up above the horizon on the day of the 21st of June. The Celtic celebrations would start with the people of the village dousing their hearths and clearing out the fireplaces from their homes. Lighting torches, they would process to the top of their sacred hill, where a bonfire had already been laid. Then the leader of the village, or the local druid, would light the bonfire to great aplomb. The people would then dance around it, singing and feasting and drinking until dawn. This procession and lighting of the bonfire would take place at dusk on Midsummer's Eve, and then the celebrations would carry on throughout the night. There would be libations made and offerings, feasting, general merriment, and a lot of dancing and drinking. But there are some certain traditions that we can look at for you to follow in your own way. Once the fire had settled down into a slightly less roaring inferno, then the fun and games would start. The young men of the tribe would leap over the flame to show their brilliant prowess about conquering evil, also to show how strong and mighty they were to the ladies out there, or the men, depending how they felt. As the fire died down lower, then the maidens would take their turn, and they would jump over the flames 3 times, backwards and forwards. And if they successfully did a clean 3-jump session, this meant that they were going to receive a speedy marriage, which I'm not sure that people like nowadays, but in those days that was all there was for them, really. Get married. Finally, it was the turn of the married women, and they would leap over the flames, and if they did it 3 times in a clean fashion, they would be guaranteed a baby. So the sacred fire was used essentially for divination by the local population. Finally, the cattle were pushed through the dying embers of the flame on midsummer morning. their backs would be singed with the lighted hazel twigs for the cattle. And these twigs were used to drive the cattle forward through the ashes, and this would make them purified. The hazel twigs were kept because these made the most excellent and very fruitful cattle drivers for the coming year. Once the fire had died down, the ashes from the flames would be collected by the local populace, and they would take them back to their own home and use them as a protective charm. So sigils would be drawn on their steps or on their lintels above their doorways with the ashes to protect them from evil. Because this was a sacred fire, everything, including its ashes, are used to help the populace. This sigil, made from ash, is to help me get through my work. This festival celebrates the sun. There are a variety of gods that the ancients would have worshipped. Maybe the Holly King has ascendancy over the Oak King. Canumnus is the horned god, and he is a fertility god, and they might have worshipped him because he had associations with the sun and was a great Celtic deity. And of course there's Belenus, the mighty Celtic sun god. The witches of old had a slightly different tradition on Midsummer Eve. This is the time when they would renew their vows to the Old One. Now the Old One, that name, was taken by the Christian faith and associated with the devil, but it was most likely, because he was horned, the Old One, was Canumnus, the wonderful horned fertility god. Covens would meet, they would cast a sacred circle around their bonfire. Then ritual dancing around the bonfire with the renewal of their vows was practised by the coven, followed by feasting and dancing and drinking, sometimes naked. Skyclad, I think they call it, although I'm not a great fan of skyclad because it's a bit cold. And I'm not very good with the cold. Don't mind the dancing and the drinking and renewing of any vows, but I don't want to get naked and do it. I need a bra. However, if you live in an apartment or in a town or even in just a village with not much outdoor space, having a bonfire is not the most ideal thing for you to do. So I would suggest that we do a little fire ritual for all your guests that doesn't involve a bonfire, but does involve all of the old associations practiced by the ancients. As you can see here, I am lighting an old chiminea, which is slightly broken, but you might be able to use a barbecue. If you haven't got any of these equipment, then a simple plate piled with lit candles will work just as well. Once you've got the fire going good and strong, get each guest to bring you a candle of their own, which you can light from the central fire. This is their candle for then the rest of the evening and to take home with them for future use. Druids loved nothing better. Well, they didn't love nothing better, but it was their traditions to cast offerings onto the bonfire. And one of their sacred flowers was the flower lavender, which is a flower of the sun. This flower would be cast onto the bonfire as an offering to the sun god. They often combined lavender with other flowers to make a little posy. And this is something that you can do on your small fire, is to cast a posy of flowers to be burnt as an offering to the great sun. Libations were also used as offerings by the Druids to their gods. Libations are merely the offering of anything that is liquid and alcoholic, so wine or most commonly mead. Mead was one of the easiest drinks to produce. Essentially, it is just honey and water and left to ferment with the natural yeasts that is found in the honey and the air. It's been made since ancient days, and it is actually delicious. I used to make it all the time at university with my brother, and it's quite potent. Well, the stuff we made was quite potent anyway. We used to colour it blue as well. I'm not quite sure why, because it was fun. I think that's what you do at university, isn't it? The libations were poured onto the flames to bring luck and prosperity for the next few months. If you don't have any mead or don't really wish to pour wine over your bonfire, a little runny honey makes just as good an offering. In England, traditionally, as I have said, Midsummer was celebrated on the 24th. One of the great flowers of Midsummer was the St. John's wort, which is this beautiful yellow hypericum flower. Great garlands of it would be made to decorate your homes. It had many different names, such as Scaredevil, Devil's Bane. I can't remember them actually. St. John's wort is what the Christians named it in honour of St. John the Baptist, whose feast day they appropriated on the 24th of June. If you haven't seen my June video, I'll put it up for you up here, because there's lots of Litha-inspired rituals that you can use as part of your celebrations, but I didn't want to repeat myself in a video 2 weeks later, so do have a look at that. Some modern day traditions, if you can't hold your bonfire, are going to be slightly different. We've already done the fire ritual, but one of the great things to do is to celebrate the traditions of the time with maybe a Devon honey cake. And Devonshire honey cake is delicious. And I'm going to show you a quick recipe so you can serve it at your Litha celebrations. We'll need 250 grams of self-raising flour, 3 large eggs, 200 grams of sugar, soft dark brown preferably, 225 grams of unsalted butter, and 250 grams of runny honey. Without being as messy as me, break your eggs into a bowl and whisk them together. I have gently warmed the honey to make it more malleable, and I'm going to add it to the eggs and whisk those together. Meanwhile, melt the butter and the sugar together so that there are no crystals remaining, and then let this cool slightly. Take your egg mix and add it to the flour, and then also add your delicious butter sugar mix, which is slightly cooled. And using a beater, beat these together. Beat the ingredients well together to make sure they're all incorporated, but do not overbeat the mixture, as this will make it tough. Line a standard 6-inch cake tin and pour in your batter. Bake at 160 degrees centigrade for approximately 50 minutes. Once it's ready, remove from the oven and cover with a little more honey to ensure a good glaze. You want to decorate your honey cake with flowers of the sun, so I am going to use the beautiful marigold. Flowers of the sun are very easy to spot because they tend to be yellow. So if it's yellow, it's most likely a flower of the sun. And these are the flowers that you can put into your posy. And I'm going to put a list here for you, I think, of the most common flowers that are ruled by the sun so that you can add them to your posy for your bonfire. I'd like to give you a Wiccan blessing for Litha. This is something that you can say over all your guests as they come, as you open your party, as they leave, whenever. It's quite good to do it at 4:31 in the morning of June the 21st as the sun rises above the horizon. As the sun spirals its longest dance, cleanse us. As nature shows bounty and fertility, bless us. all things live with loving intent, and so fulfill their truest destiny. I think that's a pretty beautiful blessing to have at the start of the longest day. I would love to know what your celebrations are going to involve at your Litha party. Do leave me a comment below and tell me, do you have any traditions that you use on a yearly basis? Because Litha is such a joyous, fun, fire festival, one of the great ones in my opinion. Do please leave me a comment on your Litha celebrations. I'm really keen to know. Don't forget to join me on Patreon as well, because there's lots happening there. But in the meantime, do please give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment, as that tells YouTube that you like this channel. And I will see you in my next video.